red checks. How do you pay these guys?
Great cash.
Leo the Lions, like now I go by the lineup. And if you can't make your mind up, I know you know where to find us. So don't go by blind luck, you should probably subscribe. Click play, kick back, chill, and watch it all live. And welcome. This is Leo the Lineup. I am Leo. Just another NBA video. I'm actually recording this Friday night. It's for the Saturday evening slate, January 2nd. I'm recording it on the 1st. However, we have a 5-game slate. And without further ado, let's just get right into it. Going to use Fanduel as today's visual, as the same with my last video. I'm just going to try to tell you what I like as of Friday evening and how I'm seeing things. One thing you're always going to want to keep in mind as far as DFS and looking for advice on YouTube is the platform difference, Fanduel and Draftkings. You have certain players priced differently on both of the platforms. You have a $60,000 salary cap on Fanduel compared to a $50,000 salary cap on Draftkings. So there's always going to be different strategies based on the types of salaries you have on your platform. I'm using Fanduel, but keep in mind DraftKings could be a little different depending on how they price the players specifically and the differences based on Fanduel. Nonetheless, this breakdown as far as just the type of players that they are and how I see the game possibly going is going to translate nonetheless, but the level of how good the play is certainly is dependent on the site sometimes, so always something to keep in mind as far as DFS. And without further ado, let's just get right into the point guards. You will have Trae Young facing the Cavaliers in a good matchup for him. He will be the most expensive point guard, obviously, with good reason. He averages the most per game on the slate as far as point guards in the position. Not much really needs to be said. He's in a good matchup against the Cavaliers. He's been killing it. Sometimes point dependent, but it doesn't matter because he's getting a lot of them. He's going to pay off, but however, he is getting pretty damn pricey. Not in love with that price tag, which leads me into a person whose price tag I really do like, and you should too, and that's Ben Simmons. 8,600. This guy was just priced in the mid-9s a couple games ago, I believe, to the point where he was just overpriced and you couldn't even consider him. However, that $8,600 price tag looks phenomenal, in my opinion, especially the matchup against the Hornets. I feel like this is a game, just a 50-point game waiting to happen for him. The salary cap has been outrageous to begin the year. We've been waiting for it, and I think this is finally a favorable spot to kind of load up on Ben Simmons in that $8,600 salary. Another thing to keep in mind when you're considering both of the platforms as far as DraftKings and Fanduel. Fanduel, obviously, you're going to have to choose two of each position. Besides center, you only choose one. DraftKings is a little bit different. More flexibility with guards and forwards and utilities. So just something to keep in mind because there is opportunity cost on Fanduel sometimes. For example, one guy might fit into your DraftKings roster perfectly, but might not translate as perfectly on Fanduel because there's certain people that you need to get to in his position, which won't let you get to that value player. So there's different strategies as far as both of the platforms go, but just wanted to get that point across, and that'll take me into Kyle Lowry, who's coming in at 8K flat once again. Same price as the Knicks game, 8K. Pretty decent. Didn't really technically pay off that salary. As far as salaries go, I usually try to look at 5 to 6x their salary, whatever they are. If they're 8,000, then 8 times 5, 8 times 6. If they're 8,200, 8.2 times 5 times 6, to try to get a good feel as if they're paying off that salary or not. Kyle Lowry looks nice against the Pelicans. However, Ben Simmons is certainly catching my eye as far as the first 3 point guards go. Darius Garland. What can I say? This guy's had a great start to his season. However, he is a young, kind of unproven player, and that price tag is getting a little bit too much for me to want to get to very much. Obviously, going to want to have a little exposure because he has shown the potential. However, he's become semi-inconsistent the last couple of games. So at that price tag, I'm not really making him a priority per se, especially when you have Malcolm Brogdon facing the New York Knicks for a cheaper or similar price, same price actually. But Malcolm Brogdon, got to like the matchup against the New York Knicks, a team he already played in the season opener where he dropped nearly 47 fantasy points on them.
At that price, especially compared to Darius Garland at the same price, you got to like Malcolm Brogdon and favor him for sure. Terry Rozier, can't really say anything bad about the guy. They drafted LaMelo Ball to kind of be the point guard of the future. Terry Rozier kind of pumped the brakes on the LaMelo steam going into the year in the opening season game against the Cavaliers, who they find themselves in a rematch up on this slate against. He had 37 minutes, 42 real points, and 54.6 fantasy points against them. Can't count on that output against them again, obviously. Plus, this last couple games have been kind of inconsistent, especially that last one. Seems to be losing steam as LaMelo is kind of building up steam and momentum, so not going to get to Terry Rozier very much, and that leads me into LaMelo's brother, Lonzo, who's coming off a good game against the Thunder. He put up 39 fantasy points. They're facing the Toronto Raptors. Not necessarily an easy matchup for him. However, I will say that $6,500 price tag seems reasonable, and certainly not going to shy away from him if he lands in my couple of my lineups as far as the last man in. Leading me into Markelle Fultz, who's actually been pretty damn decent for the Magic this season. He was the number 1 overall pick for the 76ers, I guess for good reason, even though he can't really shoot, and it took him like 15 years to finally start turning into a decent player. However, he has had a pretty good fantasy year to start the season. The last game was a relative dud against his old squad. However, facing the Oklahoma City Thunder, he's certainly viable at 5,800. George Hill, like I said, the under-the-radar veteran on a younger team. Getting around 24, 25 minutes, you know that's pretty much about going to be his workload. Didn't pay off last game. Terrible game for him. However, he has paid off a couple times. 5,500, kind of risky in my opinion. LaMelo Ball, like I mentioned with Terry Rozier, seems to be building steam and momentum as Rozier's kind of fallen off a little bit. Getting around 26, 27 minutes. It's always going to be a little risk and kind of random as he kind of works himself into the rotation and builds a solid foundation as far as playing time for himself, as they're certainly going to acclimate him more and more into the offense. However, last 2 games have been blow-up spots for him, and 5,300 is certainly going to look good for you. Alfred Payton coming in at 5K flat against the Pacers. Played these guys in the opening season game. 22 minutes, didn't really do anything, 12 fantasy points. However, has had a late run of games that he's getting there fantasy-wise. Would like to see a few more minutes than he played against the Raptors. However, that's probably because they were just losing and losing minutes because of that. But at 5K flat, he's always going to look great, especially with Frank Ntilikina going to miss again. Probably going back to the well with Alfred Payton at 5K. That's just too cheap for a starting point guard that hopefully in a competitive game should get 30, 35 minutes if everything goes right. And if you want to get cheap in the point guard position, Shake Milton. This season's kind of been like a sandwich. He had a great game the first game and a great game his last game, but it's kind of been shit in the middle. 24, 25 type minute player. Certainly not a priority, although he is coming off nearly a 36-point game against the Magic. Facing the Charlotte Hornets, relatively a good matchup. If you're looking for value on a 4 or 5 game slate, he's certainly going to be in play, depending on how the rest of your roster builds up. But that'll lead me into shooting guard. We got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at the top going up against the Orlando Magic, similar to last video I made, going to like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I'm still waiting for this blow-up game for him to kind of just establish himself as a star. He put up a dud last game against the Pelicans in a pretty decent matchup. Unfortunate, however, 8,200, still a decent price tag, and a pretty bad matchup against the Orlando Magic as far as defense goes and pace goes. However, he's still probably going to be my favorite shooting guard on this slate. Fred VanVleet going up against the Pelicans, coming off a great game against the New York Knicks where he put up 46.5 fantasy points. Barring any Pascal Siakam benching disciplinary issues with Fred VanVleet, his minutes are going to be locked in. He's relatively consistent, and he always has that ceiling. Price tag isn't the worst in the world, and it's a pretty damn good matchup against the New Orleans Pelicans. Gotta like him at 7,500. Victor Oladipo coming in at 7,200, coming off a pretty damn good game himself against the Cavaliers. Nearly 33 fantasy points. The game before that, 41.2. Seems to finally be finding himself after a couple years of injuries on and off. finally starting to look like the Victor Oladipo of old. I mean, look at these fantasy outputs in the games he's played. Looks great. In a matchup against the Knicks, who he already dropped 35 on. However, the price is starting to increase, and it's almost making him a borderline play, in my opinion, because the output wants to be a little bit higher for that price. However, certainly in play in a favorable matchup against the Knicks. Definitely going to get me some depot. Leading me into Colin Sexton, a pretty surprising, nice player on the season. Getting pretty pricey himself, kind of like Oladipo. However, he has been paying off fantasy points wise in a sneaky matchup against Trae Young and the Hawks. I could see him maybe having a little extra motivation going up against Trae and trying to prove himself as a guard that can put up some points too. So hard not to like Colin Sexton. However, with Victor Oladipo, just like him, prices are getting a little steep for me. Alec Burks still a game time decision, so you want to factor in that. Pay attention because that will affect a couple New York Knicks players. He was ruled out, and that elevated Julius Randle's projections and RJ Barrett's. So keep your eyes on the Alec Burks news because that will elevate a couple people like Kevin Knox, random players like that a little bit. And it will further solidify the Elfrid Payton minutes and role. So keep your eyes on the Alec Burks news, if he's going to play or not, because it's going to affect some Knicks players. Leading me into Devontae Graham, coming off a dud against the Memphis Grizzlies, only 18.9 points. Got off to a relatively decent start, starting to slow down, like I said, kind of similar to Terry Rozier, with the LaMelo Ball steam kind of rising a little bit. Makes me like him a little less. Terrence Ross missed last game, and it kind of elevated players like Cole Anthony and Michael Carter-Williams. However, he's probable for this matchup. Kind of lukewarm on him as a whole. Certainly a decent price, and I do think shooting guard is a place to kind of pay down for one of those spots on Fanduel, just based on position strength and the kind of value that they have. Power forward looks pretty good. Small forward, there's a steeper drop off as far as the top player and the second player, but shooting guard, you can find one of these top players, in my opinion, and then there's going to be some value guys like Lou Dort or Seth Curry, who's actually coming off a really good game. He's kind of finding himself a new role on a new team with the 76ers. Minutes are all over the place, either 30 or 24, 30 or 24. However, back-to-back good games against the Raptors and Magic. Certainly a great price at $4,900, and obviously times that by 5, 6, he's paying it off. So obviously a good pay down option as far as Fanduel when you need 2 shooting guards, 2 point guards, 2 small forwards, 2 power forwards, only 1 center. However, it is a good spot to pay down, in my opinion, because you got guys like Seth Curry, you got guys like Eric Bledsoe at 4,600. Going to find himself around 24, 25 minutes. Maybe you get lucky and find a 30-minute game. However, he paid off decently last game. If he had that same output this game, certainly paying off that price tag, which would make him a great value option to pay down after picking one of the higher shooting guards, in my opinion. Always going to have potential with Eric Bledsoe. He's typically a point per minute type player, so if that were to be the case, this slate gets 30 minutes, gets 30 points, obviously going to smash at 46. Then you got a couple guys who Eric Bledsoe competes with for playing time, and Josh Hart, coming off a pretty damn good game himself where he found more minutes than Eric Bledsoe. Looks like they're maybe preferring him, going the younger route, and the guy who's kind of been with them a little bit longer than Eric Bledsoe, obviously. Smashed last game, double-double, surprisingly. Can't count on that production again, but he's certainly going to be a pivot off of Eric Bledsoe if Eric Bledsoe is a little bit more popular. Then you got J.J. Redick, another New Orleans guard. Not going to really be a factor in my opinion, 16, 17, 20 minutes, but the points just haven't been there. So that's going to transition me into small forward. And you have Brandon Ingram at the top. Still a pretty steep price tag at $9K. I'm not in love with it. However, last time that he played the Raptors on opening day, he absolutely smashed, dropped a 60 piece. However, kind of been relatively inconsistent as far as those big games go. Pelicans kind of been disappointing the last 2 games in general. However, if you look at Tobias Harris's game log, he looks relatively similar to Brandon Ingram's at a $1,800 discount nonetheless. And just to pull that up and reiterate that point, $9K flat for Brandon Ingram. Going up against Toronto nonetheless. And you got Tobias Harris for almost $2,000 cheaper going up against the Hornets. And look at that production. So obviously, naturally going to like Tobias Harris at that price tag compared to Brandon Ingram. Gordon Hayward, somewhere in between the two players in my opinion. Got off to a super fast start with his new team. Maybe similar to the LaMelo's team, kind of building up the last two games. LaMelo's popped off. These other Hornets players have kind of had duds themselves. So I don't know if I'm looking into that too deep, but that's something that's worth pointing out and that I'm noticing is the drop off in production as far as the other Charlotte Hornets players and LaMelo Ball. Gordon Hayward, somewhere in between. Not really liking him as much as I did early on in the season. Larry Nance, guy who's filling in for Kevin Love, 6,800. The nice thing about him is he's not a point dependent player. He's going to get you rebounds. He's going to get you assists. He's going to get you steals. He's going to get you blocks. Looking good as far as output wise the last couple of games. However, that price tag is getting pretty steep. It would be nice to see him around 5,500, 5,700. Getting closer to 7K makes him less appealing. However, he does have big game potential because he gets it done everywhere as far as the box score is concerned. OG Anunoby, who kind of had a dud after the game previously where he blew up. I'm definitely totally fine going back to the well with OG, especially against the New Orleans Pelicans, who seem like a faster, younger team who would like to run up and down the court. I think that kind of fits OG's point production, how he's going to produce his points. I mean, steals, easy layups, rebounds, like that, transition type points. Looks good for OG Anunoby. Not the greatest price tag in the world at 6,500. However, it could be worse. Last slate and after I made my last video, we had the Alec Burks news that he wouldn't play, so there was usage to be had from him missing. Everybody thought that RJ Barrett would pick up that usage. However, he didn't really pay off that. I believe it was a 6,200 price tag. Didn't really pay it off. Always going to be a nice play as far as potential wise because he gets such a hefty minutes workload as far as Tom Thibodeau running his guys into the ground. 36, 37 minutes, that's a lot of time to be out there to rack up some fantasy points. However, he didn't get there the last couple of games, not making him a priority going up against the Indiana Pacers. Bogdan Bogdanovic and his new team with the Atlanta Hawks, kind of trying to find himself a new role as far as wing players on that team with DeAndre Hunter and Cam Reddish. Not necessarily a priority for me. He had a dud last game, but at that price tag, 5,400, could be a sneaky little play. Evan Fournier, the guy played a little bit, did pretty well, and then got hurt and missed the rest of the game. 7 minutes, had 7 points in 7 minutes, so a point per minute. Got injured. Got to keep your eyes on the news if he's going to play. Questionable Saturday. That will affect the Orlando rotation. So keep your eyes on the Evan Fournier news. TJ Warren, he's going to miss significant time. Going to have surgery on that foot, I believe. That's going to affect guys like Justin Holiday and Doug McDermott, who's actually a power forward on Fanduel. Nonetheless, they're kind of filling in for TJ Warren, 23, 24, 25 minutes a piece for Doug McDermott and Justin Holiday. Kind of underwhelming stats-wise, but certainly at a $3,900 pump play, not going to be the worst in the world. Taking me into Miles Bridges, who's apparently the only Hornets player who's actually doing well the last two games when LaMelo's kind of been popping off. No correlation, obviously, but at 5K, always in play. Would be nice to see him get a few more minutes. However, the expectations are going to be 23, 24, 25 type minutes. Not a bad play at 5K, but a tougher matchup going against the 76ers, especially when you aren't sure how many minutes he's actually going to get. Leading me into Cam Reddish at 4,900. He's going to be one of these cheaper Atlanta Hawks wing players that you're going to have to kind of think about and decide if you want to roster or not. You got Cam Reddish, DeAndre Hunter, and you have Bogdan Bogdanovic, all relatively around the same price, but we have Cam Reddish. Let's look at his game log. Now, I know I said I like paying down at shooting guard on this slate when you pick one of the top 4 shooting guards, maybe pick one of the value shooting guards after that. Cam Reddish and DeAndre Hunter, Bogdan Bogdanovic, certainly going to be in play as far as value small forwards in this case. DeAndre Hunter and Cam Reddish specifically, seemingly playing around the same amount of minutes, relatively around the same type of output if you look at their box score. So it's going to be kind of tricky to decide which one you would like when picking between the two. Obviously, you're going to notice that DeAndre Hunter is getting a few more minutes and the production has been slightly better, and you're getting him at a discount. So it is tricky. However, I am leading DeAndre Hunter over Cam Reddish for a $300 discount. But I do like Cam Reddish as well, so if you're making multiple entries and multiple lineups, you're going to want to get exposure to both of these value hawk small forwards, in my opinion. That, of course, is dependent on this man, but it appears he is going to miss more time. He was ruled out Friday. This is the Saturday slate. Could miss more time. I'm going to assume he is out because it's getting crowded enough for hawk small forwards. That'll take me to power forward and Domantas Sabonis, who's absolutely been kind of lighting it up this year at 9,400. Price is climbing and climbing and climbing, but the guy has just been smashing. Seems to be putting up nearly a 50-point game every game. The last time he played the Knicks on opening night, put up 54 points up against them. How can you not like him on a 4 to 5 game slate? It could be points dependent, and you might just have to eat that hefty price tag for the production that Domantas Sabonis is going to give you on Saturday. Taking me into Zion Williamson, he's kind of put up back-to-back dud games as far as his potential and what you expect for him, and certainly what you want out of an 8,100 type player. Not the greatest matchup in the world going up against Baines, Pascal Siakam, the Toronto Raptors. I'm not really sure so much about Zion Williamson. I would prefer Julius Randle, especially the matchup and back-to-back duds from Zion. He'll probably prove me wrong, but I prefer Julius Randle over Zion, honestly, on the Saturday slate. Going up against the Indiana Pacers and Domantas Sabonis in a rematch, the opening game of the year, put up 36 points. You'd like a few more points at that price tag. However, I think the output's going to be a little bit better this time around, and certainly going to prefer Julius Randle over Zion Williamson in that matchup against the Raptors. Taking me into Pascal Siakam, and it's starting to seem like deja vu. In my last video, I made the same point, that this guy finds himself priced below these two more unproven type players in Julius Randle and Zion Williamson. Going up against the Pelicans, kind of a transition, fast break type of team, I feel like. I think that is super suitable for Pascal Siakam's game style, and I think he could thrive in this matchup, honestly. Maybe find a couple steals, quick, easy transition buckets, rebounds, all that good stuff. 7,800, you're going to like that price tag, especially when he's priced below these two guys. Pascal Siakam, hoping he doesn't get benched randomly. That kind of sucked. I know that burnt a lot of people who had New Year's Eve plans and kind of set their lineups and forgot about them, went to go party and checked, and then seen that Pascal Siakam was benched for disciplinary reasons and didn't play at all. So barring anything crazy like that, gotta love Pascal Siakam at a discount to these two guys going up against the younger Pelicans team. John Collins coming in at 7K flat, going up against the Cavs. This guy's actually been smashing the last two games, even though he got off to a slower start for his standards for sure, and that price tag would make you want more of an output. But coming off back-to-back games against the Nets at 45 and 35, going to get you there at that 7K flat price tag in what seems to be a pretty decent matchup against the Cavaliers. Aaron Gordon going up against the Oklahoma City Thunder at 6,400. He's been on a minutes restriction. That's why I'm just going to probably tell you to get elsewhere. Look elsewhere until we find out that he's not going to be limited. Then he's a smash play, in my opinion. However, if you're only going to get 20 minutes out of this guy, certainly not spending 6,400 on him. So no for Aaron Gordon. And PJ Washington going up against the 76ers, going to be a tougher matchup. Obviously, Joel Embiid dominating the paint for the 76ers. I'm going to look to get elsewhere because this guy's kind of been sporadic and inconsistent anyway. Had a couple pop-off games, and then he gets you in the teens, so it's not gonna be pretty, and it's certainly not a favorable matchup against the 76ers. You got Kevin Love out, like I mentioned, going to elevate Larry Nance a little bit. However, he is priced up going back to power forward, and I have Darius Baisley going up against the Orlando Magic, kind of a slower paced team. Nikola Vucevic, not going to be a great matchup for him. Kind of letting you down ever since that first game against Charlotte where he got your hopes up. Kind of leading me into the next couple of guys, Roby, Muscala, all going to probably be maybe 15, 20 minute type players, depending on Al Horford. Not going to really give you any advice on either of those guys. However, if you were to play one of those, Darius Baisley, however, I would like him to be in the 4Ks with his teammates. But a guy I do like, obviously, like I said earlier, filling in some time for TJ Warren with Justin Holiday as Doug McDermott. Put up a nice fantasy point game, 27 points nearly, 25 minutes against the Cavs the other night. Kind of point dependent with that 18, but he did get you 9 rebounds, so not going to complain at that. On a 5-game slate, value will be thin, so Doug McDermott at 4K flat might be a lock going up against the New York Knicks. Like I said, only 5 games on this slate, so finding that value to get to the expensive players might be kind of slim pickings, so you're going to want to get to Doug McDermott. Taking me into center, and you have obviously Joel Embiid at the top. 10,500, a bit pricey for how he's been playing this year. However, he's going up against the Charlotte Hornets. Not the most minutes in the world. Not the best fantasy output at that price. However, if he banks you one of those 60-point games, he's always going to be in play as one of the few pay-up options on a 5-game slate. Joel Embiid is always going to be in play. Leading me into Andre Drummond. He's taking on the Hawks. A guy who has been kind of smashing this year. You've seen the 60 and 50-point games, but you have seen 35 as kind of his floor. So 35 at 10K is certainly never going to get it done, but 64, 66, obviously going to look great. If you can tell me he's going to get 35, 40 minutes, I'm playing him every single time. However, there always is going to be that fear that he only gets 25 minutes, and I'm probably going to look elsewhere at 10K. Elsewhere involving Nikola Vucevic going up against the Thunder, Al Horford and Baisley. If he gets 30 minutes, he's going to be a smash play in my opinion. Great price for that production if he gets the minutes. If the game stays close, hopefully the Thunder can stay with the Magic, and you can get your money's worth as far as Nikola Vucevic. Another guy who's actually been doing really, really well this year is Miles Turner, coming in at 7,700. That's a kind of a bigger price tag than we're used to seeing on him. I mean, usually he tops off at 7K flat. He's around 6,000 to 6,500 usually. But if you look at his game log, you will see why he is pushing 8K. Certainly smashing. Certainly had a great game last time he faced the Knicks. Always going to be in play. However, he's getting a bit pricey for my liking. You got Clint Capella, who's finally working his way into the Atlanta Hawks rotation after they traded a first-round pick. Took him, I believe, a couple games recently to finally make his debut for them, even though he was acquired last season. Finally getting towards a normal minutes workload for him. Finally almost towards 30. If he's at 30, he's paying off that 6-1 price tag. Not a priority, however, I don't necessarily hate Clint Capella. Steven Adams, 6K, going up against the Raptors. In his last game against his former team, the Oklahoma City Thunder, he might have had a little more motivation because he got the double-double, 35 points, paid off. Nice game for him. Lukewarm for him on a tougher matchup against the Toronto Raptors. However, I don't hate it. Price tag, would prefer it to be a little bit less. I like his price tag more than Chris Boucher or Boucher, however the fuck you want to say it. Got a little bit more running time with Pascal Siakam getting benched for disciplinary reasons. However, you can never count on minutes. You never know. He's going to be a wild card, a random GPP punt play. However, at nearly 6K, you can't depend on him at all. Al Horford in a slower matchup, like I alluded to earlier, against the Orlando Magic. He's actually been relatively productive this season. 5,400, always going to be in play. If he pushes 30, that's good enough for me. Mitchell Robinson kind of let us all down last game. However, at 5,200, once again, I'm going to hopefully play him, hope he stays out of foul trouble and can actually produce for me like he has a couple other times. 5,200, the price is right for him. He's worth the risk in my opinion at that price. Hopefully Thibodeau will give him 30 minutes and he can actually stay out of foul trouble. However, with Bismack Biyombo, he's probably going to be chalky, even in a terrible matchup going up against Joel Embiid at 5K flat. How can you not like this guy in this production? I mean, if you're not paying up top tier and Joel Embiid all the time, probably going to find yourself at Bismack Biyombo. I mean, Joel Embiid, Vucevic, Bismack Biyombo, probably my 3 favorite centers. If you want to get super cheap at center, cheaper than Bismack Biyombo, and don't want to take the value at shooting guard or small forward as I suggested, you can try to get crazy with JaVale McGee. Not going to get the most minutes, however, has been like a 2-point per minute type player the last couple games for some reason. Not worth the risk, but some people like to gamble. And Aaron Baines, he's getting around 20-ish minutes. However, the production just hasn't been there, so not going to look great in my opinion. But yeah, that's probably going to wrap it up for me. Just wanted to run over position by position as far as the Saturday evening slate goes. Another point about Fanduel I wanted to quickly make is sometimes you will see it's uneven as far as positions, like point guard, shooting guard will be super deep, but however, small forward, there'll be one good guy, and then the drop off is more significant and steep. So that kind of affects where you really want to go. Position wise, you're forced to play 2 point guards, 2 shooting guards, etc. Only 1 center, however, makes you play 2 of a certain position. So if one position is relatively weak, that certainly changes the priority and prioritizes that top tier player for that one weak position. So obviously you'd want to pay up for that one top player in small forward and a weak small forward and kind of pay down in a deeper position, if that makes any sense. If you liked this video, if it was beneficial in any way, shape, or form, or I made any good points, feel free to reflect that. Hit me with a like. If you are new, feel free to subscribe. I am new too. I believe today is actually my 1-month anniversary of the channel, so I'm new too, trying to produce as much content as I can. I know we got some good NFL playoff slates coming up, and always trying to do the NBA when it's a smaller slate, around 4 to 5, 6 games. So that's going to wrap it up for me, guys. It's been real. It's been fun. Always really fun. So until next time, as always, peace out.